listen to this conversation today in Spanish, in English, or in French, we have all three languages available to you via your Zoom. I am Cristiana Figueres, and I will be guiding you through at least the first segment of this high-level forum. However, the most important person here today is my president, His Excellency Carlos Alvarado, President of Costa Rica, who has convened this high-level forum in cooperation and with the support of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. President, thank you very much for taking time to be with us. We have just watched a video. You and I are both Costa Ricans and very proud of our country, but also very committed to lead the efforts to combat desertification, to restore land, and to inspire and support other countries to do the same, because we know that it is not one country that is going to lead us to the success. It is actually the collaboration of all of us that need to do that. At the outset, and as we know, we are starting the decade of ecosystem restoration decreed by the United Nations. And as we start this decade, we have to have our eyes on the end of the decade, the outcome that we want from that decade. By the year 2030, we have to have reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 1/2 compared to where they are now. We have to have protected 30% of the planet's territory, both water and soil. And we have to have restored the productivity of our soils in order to be able to set the basis for a much better future than we have right now. And that is, of course, our responsibility that we all share and toward which we are focused. Now, this year, as we come out slowly but surely out of a very, very painful COVID year that will still take us several months or perhaps even several years, but we have learned during this COVID pandemic that we have no other option but to set nature at the center of our recovery plans, because that is what gives us the green jobs. That is what gives an added value to rural communities. That is what is going to help us with biodiversity, with climate change, with combating desertification, and is the basis for being able to reach the 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, also by 2030. So a very, very busy decade, but frankly, an incredible opportunity to be able, as adults sitting at the decision table right now, to be able to change the course and ensure that we are writing the history that we want our children and our grandchildren to be able to live. We will be starting the first segment, and it is my pleasure to now reintroduce His Excellency, the President of Costa Rica, Carlos Alvarado Quesada, who will give some introductory remarks. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Cristiana. What a great opportunity today to talk about the topics related to land recovery in the framework of the Desertification and Drought Day, and also in the framework of the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. I would like to greet the Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Mr. Volkan Basir, President of the General Assembly, Mr. Abraham Tiao, Executive Secretary of the UNCCD, the ministers, dear colleagues, and all the people that are going to be participants of this event. In Costa Rica, we will have love, Cristiana, to have everybody here gathered so we can be close and talk about why is it crucial not only to think and discuss, but to act in these matters. Obviously, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it is not possible, but it's also, as you mentioned, a way that we can reflect and analyze why it's so critical that solutions come not in an isolated matter, but come globally. 99.9%, that means about everything that we as a humanity use or consumes comes from the land. That's a very striking piece of data. And if we do not protect it, and if we do not recover it, the different livelihoods across the globe, it affects Africa, but it's not only Africa. It affects the Americas, but it's not only the Americas, Asia, Oceania, etc. We are all affected by this. That's why we need to think today, but not only think, to act. I also think there's a key message. Sometimes we are not speaking enough, perhaps, about desertification and drought in its convention. But if you think about it, desertification and drought, biodiversity, and the climate crisis, it's all part of the same equation in which we need to act during this decade in a decisive way. If we don't do that during this decade, after, it's going to be too late. So if we're talking about acting, what does that mean? What we need to do? Well, we need to restore ecosystems. We need to find, pursue, and enforce new ways of production that are more sustainable with our environment, but also help the livelihoods of very vulnerable people around the world, indigenous communities, women and youth in the rural areas, and also that can provide services across the globe. In the video that has started this event, we saw several of my favorite programs that we are pursuing. For example, payment for environmental services. It was thought that having a forest was something natural, something given. Forests provide services not only for the people that live nearby, they provide services for everyone across the globe. So instead of thinking that that's a service for free, we need to reframe how we think about it. And at the same time, the people living in those communities should have the opportunity to produce in a sustainable way. That, to give one key example. Today, it's a great opportunity in this day of desertification and drought and how we can combat desertification to reflect, to think about it together, and also to commit ourselves, governments, communities, civil society, NGO, private sector, to act in this direction. It's not only in the interest of nature, it's in our own interest. If we do not act now, our generation and the next generation, our children and grandchildren, will face a very difficult time in a very difficult condition. But we can prevent that now, during this decade. So our invitation from Costa Rica, and I know that's how Cristiana, myself, and my fellow citizens feel, is let's do something about it. And we can do it. And I believe that's what we are going to be hearing about from different ministers and guests that are going to be part of this event during the rest of the day. So I'm very glad, Cristiana, friends, to be here. And for Costa Rica, it's a real honor to host this occasion.
Thank you very much, President. And I would like to highlight at least two thoughts that you have shared with us. The first is that we have grown up, and I am decidedly older than you are, President. So maybe you grew up already with an enlightened thinking, but I grew up thinking in silos, that biodiversity was over here, climate change over here, desertification over there, health over there, infrastructure, and we grew up thinking, acting, and executing in silo fashion. We have come to the point, as you have mentioned, that that is no longer possible. All of this is actually intimately interlinked. And it is only in as much as we realize that everything is actually either mutually reinforcing or mutually de-enforcing, that we are going to be able to have the capacity to restore what we have to restore in a timely basis. And the other idea that you have shared with us, Mr. President, is how our human life the very survival of human life depends on nature. Let's remember that every drop of water that we drink comes from nature. Every breath of air that we take comes from nature. Every morsel of food that we eat comes from nature, as you have said. And so nature is actually our survival. And it is only through valuing nature that we will be able to not just survive, but thrive. So nature is not just symbolic. It is beautiful. And in Costa Rica, we treasure it. But it is not just symbolic value. It actually has physical survival value, and hence we should be attaching much more monetary value, as we do in Costa Rica through the payment of environmental services, a project that we started many years ago and is already in other countries, but we haven't attached a monetary value to all of the other services that nature provides. So a long way to go, and as you say, in this decade. So I would like to thank you, President, for those opening words. And I would like to introduce a message from Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, who I think has very similar thinking.
Government and people of Costa Rica, official hosts of this year's World Day to combat desertification and drought. You understand the importance of sustainably managing nature's rich resources for the benefit of all. Humanity is waging a relentless, self-destructive war on nature. Biodiversity is declining, greenhouse gas concentrations are rising, and our pollution can be found from the remotest islands to the highest peaks. We must make peace with nature. The land can be our greatest ally, but the land is suffering. Land degradation from climate change and the expansion of agriculture, cities, and infrastructure undermines the well-being of 3.2 billion people. It harms biodiversity and enables the emergence of infectious diseases such as COVID-19. Restoring degraded land would remove carbon from the atmosphere. It would help vulnerable communities adapt to climate change, and it could generate an extra $1.4 trillion in agricultural production each year. The best part is that land restoration is simple, inexpensive, and accessible to all. It is one of the most democratic and pro-poor ways of accelerating progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. This year marks the start of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. On this International Day, let us make healthy land central to all our planning.
Thank you to the Secretary General. And I would also like, from New York, to introduce the President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, His Excellency Volkan Bozkır, and thank him for the high-level dialogue that he hosted and organized on desertification, land degradation on the 14th of June.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to participate by video message in today's high-level forum on Desertification and Drought Day, and thank President Alvarado and the government of Costa Rica for organizing this event. This is an issue that requires the international community's urgent and focused attention. We are facing an environmental crisis that encompasses every aspect of the natural world. Our ability to flourish depends on how we rebuild our relationship with nature, including the health of our land. The crisis of land, climate, biodiversity, and pollution are inextricably linked. Soil is home to more than 25% of the planet's biological biodiversity. I would like to thank President Alvaro for launching the Alliance for Land Stewardship at the UN General Assembly High-Level Dialogue on Desertification, Land Degradation, and Drought last week. Upscaling global initiatives on land stewardship is crucial to reverse biodiversity loss and manage climate change, as healthy land is the world's greatest carbon sink. But today, half of our agricultural land is unable to sustain any form of life, which already threatens the livelihoods and security of over 3 billion people. By 2050, global crop yields are estimated to fall by 10%, with some suffering up to a 50% reduction. I convened the high-level dialogue on desertification, land degradation, and drought with the support of UNCCD to galvanize international cooperation to avert further degradation and to revive degraded land. The wide-ranging participation of member states signaled broad commitment to this issue, raising ambition for use of land restoration as an entry point in COVID-19 recovery strategies was highlighted. Job creation, ecosystem restoration, and sustainable forest management will all benefit. I call on world leaders to invest in land restoration as part of post-pandemic recovery strategies and to partner with stakeholders at all levels. I commend today's strong push to raise ambition on land action. This will not only create jobs today, it will help build resilience for future crises. Ahead of the 3 COP-level summits on land, biodiversity, and climate, we must raise our global ambition and take actions to restore land health. The pandemic has caused untold levels of suffering. It has also presented an opportunity to invest in our future, to reset our relationship with nature, and to protect our planet and ourselves from systematic health and environmental risks. I thank you very much.
And now I would like to give the floor to the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, Mr. Ibrahim Thiaw, who has for years been focusing on the efforts of restoring land and combating desertification. Mr. Thiaw.
Thank you very much, Christiana, and good morning to all from New York. First, I would like to express my deep gratitude to you, President Carlos Alvarado, and to Costa Rica for hosting the global manifestations of the 2021 Desertification and Drought Day. This year, COVID-19 has given us our global celebrations a different taste. The pandemic has reminded us how much we depend on nature and how much we depend on each other, how much we should care about nature, as the destruction of natural habitats can affect our health, our wealth. Land is the most precious asset there is. As humans, we live on land. Land feeds us. Land provides us with the water we drink. Whether rich or poor, we share the same aspirations: healthy food, clean air, clean water, and a decent life. As the world battles with the pandemic and its severe consequences on our economy, some people may wonder why we care about land. Why is it a priority amid all the challenges the world is facing? Actually, land is part of the solution, which is why the theme of this year's Desertification and Drought Day is restoration, land, recovery. Think about the millions of farmers, indigenous peoples, and smallholders whose only asset is land. For them, land loss means economic loss, a loss of their capital, a loss of their life as they have always known it, a dislocation of their society and their way of life. In the Latin American and Caribbean region, and indeed in Costa Rica, as is the case elsewhere in the world, land degradation causes economic loss, impacting food security and the livelihoods of millions. These are losses Latin America and the Caribbean can ill afford, as 1/3 of the population lives in poverty, and about 1 in 6 people live in extreme poverty. Land degradation has multiple other consequences, including forced migration, be it in the Sahel, in Haiti, or in the Central American Dry Corridor, or in Afghanistan. What is left to a young person to do when they can no longer feed their family from their land? they flee. Land degradation is a direct cause of conflicts, competition over access to scarce land and water. Hardly a day passes without media reporting new casualties and incidents, mainly between farmers and transhumant pastoralists in Africa, in the Middle East, or in Central Asia. It is known land degradation exacerbates food insecurity. In some regions of the world, direct and indirect links have been established between land loss and terrorism, as well as all sorts of trafficking. Furthermore, with climate change, scientists record more frequent and more severe droughts. When droughts strike, most farmers and pastoralists lose their livelihoods. National economies are severely affected. In many countries, the primary sector plays such an important role that years of drought generally correspond to years of economic downturn, compounded with the loss of biodiversity, which affects productivity and the resilience of communities. So we are in a vicious cycle. The good news, and yes, there is good news, it is not all doom and gloom. Yes, we have tools to avert further damage. Yes, we can reverse these losses and lift people out of poverty. Costa Rica is one of the countries that has applied these tools, successfully so, which is one of the reasons why we are so excited that you offered to host the global celebrations of the Desertification and Drought Day. More than 1,500 technologies have been successfully tried and tested from around the world. So technically, we know how to restore degraded land. Though, unfortunately, we still have to overcome some institutional barriers. Here again, I want to use the example of Costa Rica, the first country to create a commission for the implementation of the UN Convention to combat desertification. This commission unites governments, civil society, academia in the fight against land degradation. It is a step in the right direction. Friends, allow me to share some insights from the latest research from the UNCCD. Indeed, protecting and restoring nature can help drive a green economy while preventing future epidemics and pandemics. Investing in nature-based solutions, especially land restoration, can allow us to build forward better, a greener, healthier, stronger, and a more sustainable world. Restoring land can accelerate progress in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals through the creation of millions of green jobs, through food security, women empowerment, climate action, vibrant biodiversity, water conservation, and human health. Therefore, building on the high-level dialogue organized just a couple of days ago under the aegis of the President of the UN General Assembly, the message of this forum should be very clear. We need concerted and collaborative efforts to regenerate our natural capital, transform our food systems, and rethink our infrastructure and cities. Work with nature, not against nature. Listening to the millions of voices from around the world, leaders must build ambition towards land stewardship as we move into the UN decade for ecosystem restoration. Already, 127 countries have committed to targets to measure to restore the land. In total, 1 billion hectares of land are targeted with restoration commitments. That's the size of Canada. This is a strong start. But to deliver and increase ambition, we need to get the financing right, starting with the post-pandemic stimulus packages. In that respect, we appreciate the global initiative on land restoration adopted by the G20, aiming at halving the amount of degraded land by 2040. The Great Green Wall in the Africa's Sahel is a good example of regional cooperation, with 11 countries across Africa joining forces to restore land. Similar initiatives exist in Latin America and the Middle East and elsewhere. So there is momentum. People are starting to understand that investing in land-based solutions to sustain post-pandemic recovery efforts is a smart economic decision. Indeed, every single dollar spent on ecosystem restoration can generate up to $30 to the economy. With all its hardship, the pandemic has given us an opportunity to rethink about nature, an opportunity to secure a future of healthier people and nature, secure livelihoods, and greater equality and opportunity for all. There are still major barriers, but we have the tools to succeed. Though, as you know, tools are only useful when they are used aptly, with determination, and with a strategic vision. We must grab our tools and use them to build the future we want to leave to the next generations. This, dear friends, is our collective task. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tiao. Thank you for your overview and your inspirational, motivating message here. Mr. President, I think we have heard very consistent messaging from the three representatives of the international community, also very consistent with your opening message. What do you leave this conversation with?
Well, I do believe there's, from what we heard, a consensus from these leaders of the necessity to act. And also, what Mr. Tiao mentioned is that there are several solutions on the table. We have them through technology, or we have them through nature-based solutions. We have experienced some of those here in Costa Rica. So now what we need is the will to act and the planning to act as soon as possible. Also, the finance to act. And this, the good part of this, is that we're going to see the benefits on the people, particularly the most poor or vulnerable. This is not an investment that's going to be untangible. On the contrary, this is going to be very, very tangible for the people across the globe. Many people, even on the cities, they require the services from the land for what they consume, for the air, as you mentioned, for the water, for the food. So this is a holistic solution, an integrated view. In this era, as you mentioned, we have to deal with complexity on the problems. There is no one single solution, but given that scenario, we should start acting now with comprehensive approach. And I believe that's one of the great challenges we face today.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for summarizing this conversation so well. I do appreciate it, and I think our listeners will be inspired to do the same. And as you said at the very beginning, to act collectively, because it is not one country, small or large, that will be able to make the transformation that is necessary in the time that we have, but rather through working and strengthening our multilateral and cooperation efforts. So thank you very much for everything that you have done there. Thank you for taking the time this morning to be with us. And friends, I would like now to give over the moderation to Costa Rica's Minister of Environment and Energy, Andrea Mesa, who will be moderating a ministerial conversation. But before that, we would like to treat you to a short video that is actually put together for you by one of Costa Rica's fantastic bands, Mal País. I leave you with the land anthem.
Tener un lugar para vivir y un suelo donde echar raíz. La tierra que nos vio nacer y caminar nos da lo que necesitamos, pero hay que parar y ver dónde estás y amar toda esa belleza. Esa alegría de vivir en este lugar. Oh, nacimos de la tierra. Esta vida que te llama desde el fondo de la selva. Llévate a nuestro orgullo. Una única bandera. Vamos a vivir, vivir con alegría. Vamos a cuidar, cuidemos el planeta. Recordemos cada día que nacimos de la tierra.
Es tiempo de inventar el tiempo que vendrá, escrito en la lluvia y las olas del mar. El mundo entenderá que tiene que cambiar, que este es nuestro hogar, nuestro
Pensamos cada día que nacimos de la tierra. En este lugar. Recordemos cada día que nacimos de la tierra. Nacimos de la tierra. Recordemos cada día que nacimos de la tierra. En este lugar. Recordemos cada día que nacimos de la tierra. Nacimos de la tierra.
Thank you, Christiana, for giving me the floor and for your generosity for contributing to this event. Good evening, good morning, excellencies, friends. I'm so delighted to be moderating this high-level panel. We will be hearing from different leaders, ministers, how can we implement land restoration, land solutions to tackle climate change, to tackle biodiversity crisis, and also to recover our economies. We've been hearing from the different leaders that this is possible, that we have the technologies, that we have the solutions, that we need to integrate them in our different policies, that we cannot continue working in this isolated manner, that this is a whole of a government and whole of society approaches. And this is some of the elements that we will be analyzing. But before entering with the different speakers and the different panelists, I will also like to share some of the elements that we are doing here in Costa Rica. As you heard, we've been implementing the payment of environmental services scheme and program. We've been working with the different producers and farmers and indigenous communities. But we are understanding that we need to move to a new generation of this payment of environmental services, that we can also understand new initiatives, one that it is called Rec Soil. How can we enhance the way that we are working with different communities around the world in the way that we are doing recarbonization of soil, but that we need to understand also what's the value that we can give to this initiative and how can we integrate it also in this new generation of payment of environmental services. And now I will like to connect with my friends, with the different ministers all around the world. I know that they will like to share their views, and I would like to start with my friend, Mr. Gabriel Quijandría, the Minister of Environment of Peru. And Minister, and thank you, hello to all the ministers, and thank you for your patience, ministers. And Minister Gabriel, in your view, what is the role of restoration in assisting countries to enable green recovery and emergence from the pandemic more resilient to future and current crisis? Minister, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And first of all, let me thank President Alvarado for the invitation. I'm covering here the President Sagasti. He was the one that was invited by President Alvarado, but as you may imagine, the political situation right now with the elections that do not end till now has made President Sagasti unable to join. He sends his regards and his commemoration and his regards in commemoration of the Desertification Day. For us in Peru, desertification and restoration is something very important. We are a country with around 25% of our national territory prone to desertification. This is around 32 million hectares of land that it's dry, hyper dry, in some cases dry or subhumid, and located mainly in our coastal area and in the Andean highlands, and this the nature of these lands and the need to act on them and to restore them has come absolutely clear during COVID-19, because we have found and we have understood that this dysfunctional relationship we have had with nature is the one that has caused the situation we are facing right now in the world. The land degradation and ecosystem degradation and the increase in the interaction of humans with wildlife is in the base of this pandemic, of this situation we're having. So to reverse this, we need to include ecosystem restoration, the struggle against land loss or land productivity loss as part of the recovery package. We need to understand that investment in the recovery of ecosystems and the contributions these ecosystems provide, they must be part of our packages, of our incentives in terms of generating economy or revitalizing the economy of the local areas that have been hit by the environmental blow, the initial environmental blow, and now are under threat of COVID-19. So in following this idea, we have been working with indigenous communities, for instance, in certain areas of our Amazon surface, to preserve and recover forests that have been lost during the last years. We have established this program of financial incentives for them to assume some conservation agreements with us to allow them to receive a financial incentive for them to use it in development solutions for them. And 2 days ago, we were with President Sagasti also supervising the end of this recovery we have done in a protected area, in a very important protected area we have in our Amazon that was affected in 2016 by illegal mining. So an activity that generates impacts in forest cover and in land, and we have been able to see that the effort to recover the ecosystem has also had the effect of generating jobs for local people. We were able to generate 65,000 wage days for local people involved in the restoration, in the planting of new trees in this area that was degraded and now is in process of recovery. This is in line with our effort and our commitment to reduce the land degradation in the country, and shows that the benefit for the environment is also a benefit for people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Andrea. Thank you for sharing these inspiring words and these practical views. And I'm taking some of the words that you just mentioned, this functional relationship with land. And taking from this phrase, I will like now to introduce the Minister of Environment of Botswana, Mrs. Filda Keren. And Minister, taking from this element that we just heard, this functional relationship with land, and how can we address this dysfunctional relationship with land? Can we, and we are hearing that we have land-based solutions, that we can be generating jobs at the local level, but what are the financial needs? What is the capacity building that we need to generate? What are the elements that we need to address in order to scale up these land-based solutions at the local, regional, national, and international level? Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning. It's actually late afternoon for us here in Southern Africa. Let me thank you, Honorable Minister, and recognize and appreciate the invitation from the Honorable His Excellency, the President, for inviting us to this very wonderful and quite fruitful, I believe, discussion. I'm going to share with you what I believe is very critical, direction towards our interventions in terms of restoring land and making it productive in terms of economic recovery, especially in the wake of COVID-19. As the speakers have already said, it's all about acting and acting now, so that by 2030, we have actually restored our land and healed it, and actually had economic activities thriving because our land is healthy. In terms of funding, I've picked a number of points that I believe are very, very important for us to address. The first thing is to make sure that when we domesticate the UNCCD and other international frameworks, we are able to identify capacity needs for both governments, local structures, and regional structures, for us to be able to understand what will be required for us to actually implement programs and plans that have to address our commitments towards the, our UNCCD commitments. We need to create special and targeted funding for activities that have the highest impact on rural livelihoods. Because if you don't address poverty at the rural level, we are now going to allow people to actually engage in activities to survive, and these activities will pose risks, to the land, to water resources, to biodiversity in general. So whatever we do, we must be able to make positive changes on the ground, changing livelihoods. So targeted budgeting for those activities is very critical. We also need to now improve in terms of managing our resources. Sometimes it's not that funding is not available, but it's how we actually are able to make it sufficient. So here we need to rationalize funding resources from various government ministries that are integrated in terms of programs, and also from international development partners. If the Ministry of Agriculture is going to get funding from here and there, and then my Ministry of Environment also gets funding from another development partner, and we are not connected in terms of integrating our programs, then we are not going to be able to achieve all these things we are trying to achieve. So we need to be able to integrate at ministry level, and also integrate in terms of how we deal with our partners to rationalize resources so that they can be sufficient and they can be actually, applied and produce the best results for us. We need to strengthen the local structures that are responsible for coordinating implementation of programs at rural level. We have in Botswana district level structures that implement local economic programs that have to do with also promoting and coordinating intensive or labor intensive programs that actually deal with poverty at family level. So that structure of coordination needs to be financed. It has to have a budget, and it has to be also capacitated in terms of skills to be able to coordinate those programs that are done at community level. We also need to intensify our monitoring of activities, and involving communities is very, very critical, because we have to focus on building capacities of implementers at community level through NGOs, through CBOs, and through local activists, even going to families so that they are aware of their roles, because we want everyone to have the value of land and actually be a participant in the solutions. So technical capacity from development partners that will be provided to actors at all these levels is very key. Technology transfer, digitization, especially in the wake of COVID-19, we need to be able to intensify application of technologies for us to be able to disseminate information and actually implement a lot of activities. Research is critical. We have just started a program with the Food and Agricultural Organization that is going to help us to get data on where land is being degraded and why, and then come up with intensive programs that is going to focus on restoring that land. Involving private sector is key, Honorable Minister, because the private sector has got the skills, the capacities, most of the time technology, and they are more organized. So we want to learn from them. We want to leverage what they have in terms of skills transfer to our local actors, especially communities that don't have that skill. We want to promote programs that focus on healthy land or on restoring land. So we're looking at that in terms of engaging the communities in terms of capacitating them to do policing, so they can be able to identify culprits that do activities that pose risks to our land and biodiversity in general. If there's the community policing itself, it's going to have greater impact, because they will be able, to report illegal activities like sand mining. Here we have got illegal mining of gravel where people want to build their houses, they just dig anyhow. We also have illegal dumping of waste, where now people will drop rubble and vegetation is at risk, water resources, dams, and rivers are at risk. So community policing is very, very critical. So you can capacitate our communities to be able to do that for us. Public education is also key, so we can engage our civil society actors to disseminate the right information that will catalyze and mobilize actions at community level. At the end of the day, we want to also to come up with projects that will provide or generate jobs. Because like I said, if we cannot provide alternative income for livelihoods or alternative income sources, these people will be forced to do activities to survive that is going to actually harm our land. We want also to advocate and build a strong voice against those who don't handle our land and biodiversity resources very well, like the way we want to do it. Now, in terms of the responses also, farmers need to be assisted with climate smart agriculture, so that the farming practices, are correct and they are productive, especially being resilient, towards or against climate change, against pollution, and against the drought and desertification. We want to be able to come up with activities that promote the utilization of natural resources that will actually guard against the indiscriminate harvesting of firewood, indiscriminate harvesting of wild or we call them veld products, wild fruits and other resources, so that you can preserve them and actually preserve the land as well. But in terms of scaling up, if I may move faster, we want to make sure that monitoring and evaluation activities are strengthened, and capacities towards that is also strengthened, so that we can have lessons that we have learned, well documented, that can be used in terms of rolling out the programs to other areas and other regions as well. So lessons, documentation of success stories is very key. Sometimes we are weak in monitoring, or we just have success stories that you don't take up. So we want to use that to be able to inform, together with continuous research and data available for us to be able to know how do we scale up to other areas, and how do you use the lessons from successful projects to roll out programs. Regional integration, desertification, climate change, it knows no boundaries. So within the SADC region, like our Southern African region, we have got, sustainable environment, frameworks that guide countries. And we need to come out strong as a block of countries in one region to have one strong voice and agree and harmonize our interventions, so that not one country will be doing activities or supporting policies, that actually are not harmonized with the others. So harmonizing programs, policies, even legal statutes, so that as a region, we are always able, or we are also able, to move together in one accord, and then we are also successful together. Internationally, like I said, we just need to be able to ensure that we domesticate international frameworks and make sure that they can be translated down to the level of communities where we want to make greater impact. Sustainable interventions are actually, anchored, at community level. When we do that, building back together, we will be able to, by according to our commitments, by SDGs, by 2030, we'll be able to manage, the impact of climate change, increase our resilience, and also manage, pollution, and save our soil, save our vegetation, and avail more healthier land for economic development. In Botswana, we have the Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan that is based and anchored on sustainable environment, and land availability. Healthy land is one of the core, drives that drive our, economic plans. I want to stop here, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I always get so inspired when I hear these powerful women sharing their views. And Minister, thank you. You just made a very systemic approach. You mentioned elements of restoring land, but addressing poverty in rural areas, the importance also of this regional approach, elements of the resources that we need to integrate digitalization in agriculture. There were a lot of elements, but at the end, you just mentioned healthy land. So thank you really for this, for all these inputs, and also elaborating from this concept of healthy land. I will like now to move to my other panelist who is here with us, the Minister of Environment and Natural Resources of Iceland, Mr. Gudmundur Ingid Gobransson. And Minister, having this concept of healthy land, and we've been hearing the importance of having a systemic approach, Minister, and how can we address and enhance and implement this concept of a systemic approach between the three Rio conventions? We've been hearing a lot of specific ideas and concepts to be implemented in the territories, but how can we scale up this integrated approach with the three UN conventions? Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and honorable participants and dear friends, colleagues. It's a great pleasure to be with you here today. The World Day to Combat Desertification and Drought is today, and so is actually Iceland's Independence Day.
Congratulations.
So, thank you so much. So I wanted to start with that. Actually, on Independence Days, we often pay respect to the past and we look ahead and try to inspire with hope. And I'm not sure if I will be able to inspire you with hope, but I'm going to at least tell you a short story from the experience that Iceland has had in combating desertification and fighting climate change and increasing biodiversity at the same time. So Iceland has lost over 95% of its original birch woodland cover for the last, during the settlement of the country for the last 1100, 1200 years. And the reasons are many and they are interacting. They range from unsustainable use of our woodlands to grazing to cooling climate in the past and to volcanic eruptions. And we actually have one volcanic eruption going on right now. But it was then at the turn of the 20th century when concentrated efforts by the state began to fight soil erosion in the country. The first law was put in 1907, so it's more than 100 years old. And our sort of state efforts started in trying to change the course of what was actually happening in the country. A lot of areas that were simply going under sand and dust. And to cut a long story very short, we managed through various methods and a lot of experience, going from more top-down approaches to more bottom-up approaches in the last few decades, so that today we are actually gaining more through restoration than we are losing. And so perhaps my message is that this fight is really possible. And that is these are my words of hope. But there are 3 points I believe are essential as we move forward on this matter internationally. And first, we need to develop better policies on sustainable land use worldwide, where ecosystem science is our guidance, just like we have put science in the first place in the corona epidemic and listen to scientists. Then secondly, I want to echo what Cristina Figueres said about silos, because we need to move out of the comfortable silos that we are used to thinking in and that we are used to acting or within. So we need to focus our effort much more on synergetic approaches, such as ecosystem restoration, where we are tackling the 3 Rio Conventions in one go. And we've started projects like that here in Iceland and are putting a lot of more funding into such nature-based solutions. And I believe that our international organizations, they need to develop and publish guidelines for member states of these conventions for supporting such synergetic policies. And in that regard, also, we need international funds to channel money into projects that fulfill such international guidelines. And third and last, I think we need to move much faster on developing and implementing smart systems and policies which enable private companies to take part in such projects, but within these guidelines, because we want to do things in the right way. We need and we want to do projects that are decreasing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere or from the atmosphere at the same time as we restore biodiversity and combat land degradation. So lastly, I just want to say, let's act together for restoring nature and at the same time strengthening the livelihoods of our people. So I send you my very best regards from Iceland, and thank you for a lovely panel.
Thank you, Minister. And your story is giving us hope, because it's showing us that when we implement good policies, we can address the challenges, these environmental challenges, and at the same time generate welfare. So I think that it's a great successful story. And now I would like to move to our other panelist, Minister of Environment of Algeria, Mrs. Dalila Boujitma, and Minister.
Dalila Boujitma.
Thank you,
Oui, Madame,
Minister.
bonsoir. Oui, vous m'entendez?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. There will be translation, so I will be speaking in English. We can hear you. And we would like to hear from you, Minister. Again, these reflections around this integrated approach. We've been hearing the importance of this integrated approach and the synergies among the three Rio Convention and this perspective from Algeria. How can we implement this integrated approach? Minister, the floor is yours.
Merci, madame. Monsieur le Président du Costa Rica, Carlos Alvarado Quesada, Monsieur le Secrétaire général des Nations Unies, Antonio Guterres, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Monsieur le Secrétaire exécutif de la Convention des Nations Unies de lutte contre la désertification, bonsoir. Au nom de mon pays, l'Algérie, permettez-moi d'abord de remercier la République du Costa Rica d'avoir abrité la célébration internationale de la Journée mondiale de lutte contre la désertification et la sécheresse, qui coïncide avec des réunions préparatoires de la 26e conférence des Nations Unies sur les changements climatiques et la 15e conférence des Nations Unies sur la Convention de la diversité biologique. Mesdames et messieurs, sous le slogan « Restauration Terre reprise » cette année, la journée de lutte contre la désertification et de la sécheresse est axée sur la transformation des terres dégradées en terres saines. La restauration des terres dégradées favorise en effet la résilience économique, la création d'emplois, l'augmentation des revenus et la sécurité alimentaire. Elle tend également à la sauvegarde de la biodiversité et permet en fait de piéger le carbone atmosphérique à l'origine du réchauffement de notre planète. Elle peut ainsi atténuer les effets des changements climatiques et contribuer à une reconstruction plus écologique suite à la pandémie du Covid-19. Dans le monde entier, oui, madame. Dans le monde entier, de plus en plus de voix s'élèvent en faveur d'un rétablissement plus écologique face à la pandémie du Covid-19. Une telle reprise contribuerait à la résilience des économies. Elle déclencherait une action forte et urgente en faveur de la lutte contre la désertification et la restauration des terres. Elle permettrait d'inverser les phénomènes de dégradation de l'environnement et de la perte de la biodiversité qui sapent les moyens de subsistance de nos sociétés et augmente le risque de futures pandémies. La réhabilitation des écosystèmes dégradés atténue les effets du changement climatique et renforce les défenses naturelles contre les catastrophes et les phénomènes météorologiques extrêmes tels que les feux de forêt, les sécheresses, les inondations et les tempêtes de sable et de poussière. La restauration des paysages naturels permet de réduire les contacts étroits entre la faune sauvage et les aménagements humains, constituant ainsi une protection naturelle contre les maladies zoonotiques. Sans la restauration des terres, nous continuerons à faire face à des crises mondiales. Assurer la sécurité alimentaire et hydrique, réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre et conserver la biodiversité ne seront pas possibles sans des efforts concertés pour régénérer notre capital naturel et transformer nos systèmes alimentaires. Il est à la fois, mesdames et messieurs, urgent et essentiel d'éviter, de ralentir et d'inverser la perte des terres arables et des écosystèmes naturels pour assurer un relèvement rapide face à la pandémie et garantir la survie à long terme des populations et de la planète. La mise en œuvre d'initiatives intelligentes en matière de restauration des terres serait particulièrement bénéfique pour les femmes et les jeunes qui sont généralement les derniers à recevoir de l'aide en temps de crise. À l'aube de la décennie des Nations Unies pour la restauration des écosystèmes, nous avons de véritables chances de mieux reconstruire suite à la pandémie du Covid-19. Si les pays parviennent à restaurer les quelques 800 millions d'hectares de terres dégradées qui se sont engagés à réhabiliter d'ici 2030, nous serons en mesure de protéger l'humanité et notre planète du danger qui nous menace. Mesdames et messieurs, En Algérie, la lutte contre la désertification en milieu stépique, pré-saharien et saharien vise à concilier d'une part la satisfaction des besoins des populations et d'autre part de restaurer et d'améliorer le potentiel productif des terres. Elle consiste à privilégier des programmes de développement rural intégrés reposant sur des mécanismes participatifs et sur l'intégration de la stratégie d'élimination de la pauvreté, et ce, par l'atteinte de l'objectif global qui est construit par la prise en charge de quatre axes représentant les principales composantes du programme de lutte contre la désertification. 1. La relance et la réhabilitation du projet du barrage vert en tenant compte du choix d'espèces plus résistantes aux aléas climatiques, avec l'installation d'un organe de coordination de lutte contre la désertification et de la relance du barrage vert, dispositif permanent au niveau du secteur concerné, lequel s'emploiera à la préparation, à la concrétisation et au suivi permanent de cette opération. La réhabilitation de la nappe alphabétique, la protection et la gestion des parcours et enfin le développement de l'agriculture saharienne. L'Algérie a aussi lancé un programme national de reboisement et de verdissement par la plantation de 43 millions de plants sous le slogan « Un arbre pour chaque citoyen » à travers tout le territoire national, dont 12 millions de plants ont été mis en terre, et ce à travers les forêts, les bassins versants, dans le cadre de la protection contre l'érosion hydrique, de la réhabilitation du barrage vert, ainsi que la protection des infrastructures contre l'ensablement dans les zones stépiques et sahariennes depuis son lancement en 2019. La réalisation de ces programmes est un défi d'une importance vitale, étant impacté par la pandémie et la baisse de la ressource financière. Mesdames et messieurs, l'Algérie, à l'instar des autres pays du monde, célèbre aujourd'hui la journée internationale de la désertification. Cette journée sera l'occasion cette année de faire un état des lieux sur les réalisations assurées par le pays depuis 25 années de ratification de la dite convention. Cette journée, c'est également l'occasion pour le lancement de l'initiative nationale par la restauration du barrage vert. Cette initiative s'insère dans la stratégie du pays en matière de lutte contre la désertification et d'adaptation au changement climatique, et qui va assurer un environnement propice à la création de richesses, à la croissance économique et à la sécurité alimentaire et la stabilité sociale. Enfin, le cadre international de lutte contre la désertification doit travailler pour la recherche de solutions concrètes et adaptées aux exigences nationales et régionales. Ces solutions, mesdames et messieurs, reposent sur les éléments suivants. Reconnaître les efforts déployés par les pays, notamment en développement, dans la lutte contre la désertification, fournir le soutien technique et financier aux pays touchés par la désertification, tout en œuvrant pour le rendre disponible de manière permanente et adéquate. Renforcer l'échange d'expériences et d'informations entre les pays et entre les différents acteurs. Adopter des mécanismes qui faciliteraient l'accès à l'information et aux données scientifiques, notamment ceux qui permettent la mise en place de systèmes d'alerte précoce contre les phénomènes périodiques affectés par le phénomène de désertification. Concernant l'avis de mon pays concernant les trois conventions, la synergie des trois conventions de Rio, au niveau national, l'Algérie appelle à aller vers des projets qui lient les trois conventions, mais également qui lient des pays entre eux dans le cadre de la coopération régionale. À titre d'exemple, la mise en place d'aires protégées transfrontières qui impliquent 2 ou 3 pays voisins. Il est recommandé également d'aller vers la restauration des écosystèmes partagés par certains pays voisins, à l'exemple de la mise en place de ceintures vertes qui peut impliquer les pays gravement touchés par la désertification et la sécheresse. Par ailleurs, il est également proposé de renforcer la gouvernance mondiale en faveur du développement durable par le biais des mécanismes de négociation qui sous-tendent les trois conventions de Rio et resserrer la collaboration entre les secrétariats des conventions et avec d'autres organismes intéressés appartenant ou non à la famille des Nations Unies. D'adopter une stratégie globale de l'économie verte, notamment dans la valorisation des services écosystémiques avec des objectifs et des indicateurs précis et mesurables, axés notamment sur les emplois verts, l'innovation technologique, la recherche et le développement et la valorisation du capital naturel. Développer des indicateurs écologiques et sociaux combinant la désertification, la biodiversité et les changements climatiques. Faciliter le transfert de technologies et stimuler l'échange de savoir-faire et d'expériences dans le cadre de la coopération Sud-Sud et Nord-Sud. Convaincu de l'importance et du rôle que peut jouer la synergie entre les trois conventions, l'Algérie appelle à une alliance stratégique entre les trois conventions qui pourrait être négociée et mise en œuvre dans le cadre de la décennie dédiée par les Nations Unies à la restauration des écosystèmes, qui se veut une concrétisation réelle de la synergie entre les trois conventions. Enfin, il reste plus que nécessaire que la synergie entre les trois conventions de Rio reste tributaire de la mise en place de moyens adéquats de mise en œuvre, y compris les ressources financières, les capacités et la technologie internationale. Je remercie encore Madame la ministre de l'Environnement du Costa Rica pour nous avoir invités à cette journée qui est très, très importante pour mon pays. Je vous remercie, messieurs, mesdames, et bon courage pour tous les pays en matière de lutte contre la désertification. Merci encore une fois.
Merci beaucoup, Minister. Thank you so much for sharing your views and for demonstrating that these synergies are possible. You just mentioned one element that I'm taking also some notes here as remarks, the importance of consider nature as an asset and to give and to consider that we have there a natural capital and the importance of giving economic value to nature. So thank you very much, Minister. And now I will continue with our last speaker, Secretary General of the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development of Senegal, Mr. Amadou Lamine Guisset. Mr. Lamine, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience. And now we would like to hear your views also around the importance of this synergy and how can we enhance this integrated approach on the ground and also at the international level. Secretary, the floor is yours.
Merci. Merci beaucoup, Madame le Ministre. Je voudrais à mon tour remercier le Costa Rica de nous avoir conviés à cette importante rencontre dans le cadre de la Journée internationale de lutte contre la désertification. Comme vous le savez, le Sénégal, dans le cadre du développement économique et social, a initié d'importantes activités dans le cadre de la lutte contre la désertification. Et le développement économique et social du pays nécessite une croissance économique soutenue et inclusive, capable de produire un fort impact positif sur les conditions de vie des populations. C'est la raison pour laquelle il est apparu de nouveaux défis, à savoir l'émergence économique, l'amélioration de la productivité des ressources naturelles, ainsi que l'adaptation au changement climatique, tout en faisant droit à une gouvernance vertueuse et efficace. Préserver les forêts et les sols, c'est contribuer à pérenniser les productions agro-silvopastorales, à réduire la pauvreté, à maintenir la biodiversité et à atténuer les changements climatiques. Dans ce cadre, la stratégie du Sénégal en matière de lutte contre la désertification et l'atteinte de la neutralité des terres à l'horizon 2030 se construit autour de 2 points. D'abord, des actions de reboisement et de reforestation, plantation mise en défense, régénération naturelle assistée. Ensuite, des mesures de lutte contre l'érosion hydrique par des mesures structurales et pratiques agricoles. Ces actions, pour réussir, doivent être basées sur un appui et un accompagnement des actions de lutte contre la désertification et un renforcement de la lutte contre la désertification, un renforcement des initiatives génératrices de revenus. Si le premier groupe d'action vise essentiellement le renforcement de l'environnement politique, législatif et institutionnel, ainsi que des capacités des acteurs, le second point a trait à l'expérimentation de nouveaux modèles de développement participatif et le développement intégré des zones forestières et périforestières pilotes. Au Sénégal, l'exécution des programmes de lutte contre la déforestation et la dégradation des terres vise à terme la réduction des superficies de biomasse brûlée, l'accroissement et la pérennisation des productions forestières, la reconstitution et la préservation du couvert végétal et le renforcement des capacités des différents acteurs. En effet, les 3 dimensions du développement durable sont désormais intégrées de manière transversale, permettant à l'agenda 2030 de couvrir l'intégralité des enjeux du développement durable, tels que le climat, la biodiversité, l'énergie, l'eau, mais aussi la pauvreté, l'égalité de genre, la prospérité économique ou encore la paix et la justice. Les actions de terrain prennent en charge les 3 conventions: désertification, changement climatique, biodiversité. En effet, le reboisement, la régénération naturelle assistée, la lutte contre les feux de brousse, les actions de défense et de restauration des sols permettent d'améliorer la capacité de séquestration de carbone, de développer la biodiversité aussi bien animale que végétale, d'augmenter la fertilité des sols pour lutter contre la dégradation des terres. Cette synergie d'action concrète sur le terrain devrait être accompagnée d'une stratégie de mobilisation des ressources axée sur 3 conventions de Rio et d'une promotion de programmes de recherche-développement qui iront dans le sens de la corrélation des approches d'intervention sur l'ensemble des écosystèmes. Voilà, Madame le ministre, le message que je voulais lancer au nom du Sénégal et je remercie encore une fois la République de Costa Rica de nous avoir invités à ce panel de haut niveau. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Secretary. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your views. And I think that we've been hearing a lot of inspiring and concrete actions from the different parts of the world. And now to close this session, we will be hearing a short video message from Byung-Am Choi, the Minister of Korea Forest Service of the Republic of Korea.
Excellencies and distinguished delegates, I have the honor to speak on behalf of the Republic of Korea at this important event. Allow me to begin by thanking the government of Costa Rica for its kind invitation to the global observance of the 2021 Desertification and Drought Day. Today, the world is experiencing the unprecedented impact of climate change, including natural disasters, environmental degradation, and emerging infectious disease. We need to work together across borders to tackle these global challenges. In this context, Korea's reforestation knowledge and experience can help address climate change and achieve carbon neutrality. The Republic of Korea successfully restored deforested lands after the Korean War, especially through the establishment of Korea Forest Service and forest laws, as well as through Korean people's active participation in tree planting. Building on this successful reforestation experience, Korea is now supporting developing countries through multilateral cooperation, as well as through bilateral ODA. In particular, we are working with the FAO to restore degraded landscapes. We are also collaborating with the CBD Secretariat to build the capacities of developing countries and to support their ecosystem restoration efforts. In an effort to help address the desertification, the Korean government has been supporting the implementation of the UNCCD and land degradation neutrality through the Changwon Initiative. In addition to this initiative, Korea launched an initiative entitled the Peace Forest Initiative in collaboration with the UNCCD Secretariat at UNCCD COP14 in 2019. The Peace Forest Initiative aims to promote forest cooperation across borders between neighboring countries. We aspire to develop this initiative to be a major global initiative that supports the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021 to 2030. In closing, we wish to emphasize the restoration of forest to a pre-industrial state as a climate solution, and we hope to collaborate with the global community to this end. As part of the effort in 2022, Korea will host the 15th World Forestry Congress. The event will provide a platform to explore pathways to build a green, healthy, and resilient future. We cordially invite the world leaders to join this event and to share their valuable insight with us. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Before closing this interactive panel, ministers, friends, thank you so much for your participation, for celebrating this Desertification and Drought Day with us and with the whole international communities. We've been hearing a lot of positive messages. There is hope. We have the technology. We have the knowledge. We need to continue working together because it is the only way that we can address the challenges, the biodiversity, the climate challenge, and we need to continue working in this systemic manner. So thank you so much, ministers, for your patience and for sharing your knowledge and your lessons learned. Thank you so much. And now, before giving the floor to my friend Cristiana Figueres to continue with the moderation of the event, I wish to thank all the participants for taking your time, for sharing this celebration with us. We're so inspired for being hearing all the different messages. There is hope, but we need to have an integrated approach. We need to work with this whole of society and whole of government approaches. I think that this is one of the key remarks and elements. Cristiana, I'm so inspired right now. I don't know how do you feel, but I think that there is a lot of work to do. This is a decisive decade, but we have the knowledge and there is, I will say, appetite from when I was hearing the views from the different ministers, there is appetite to really start working with this different approach, with this different mode of work.
No, I totally agree, Minister. And I think there's appetite and there's commitment. And I think the commitment comes because so many of us have realized that we truly are in the decisive decade that is going to decide whether we continue walking down a path of destruction that threatens our physical health, economic and political survival, or whether we choose a very different path that is open to us, but that we actually have to walk very actively down in order to be able to make a turning point. And to close this session, Minister, it really is completely impossible to summarize, but I have tried on your behalf. And I would like to summarize this very important conversation through 5 R's, because I think they represent the turning point that we are facing. The first R is reverse the losses that we have incurred. The second is restore degraded lands. The third, regenerate soil, water, and air. The fourth, recover productivity. And all of this in order to be able to do the fifth, which is reset our relationship with nature, which is clearly what we have to do in order to not just be able to survive meagerly, but actually to be able to thrive, to be able to bring especially populations that are under the level of poverty, bring them up into their dignified well-being on this planet. And so for a thriving and prosperous 21st century, we have to reset our relationship with nature. And I also would like to thank all the ministers, the distinguished ministers, and you, my dear friend, for today's conversation. Thank you to everyone who has been with us here today. Thank you for your participation and your individual and collective commitment to restoring and resetting our relationship with nature. And just before we close, may I invite everyone who is with us today to please continue to follow us through Facebook and YouTube. We will be showcasing quite inspiring examples of land restoration through our talk show. With that, thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. And thank you again to Minister Mesa.
Thank you.
Todos deben tener un hogar para vivir y un suelo donde echar raíz. La tierra que nos vio nacer y caminar nos da lo que necesitamos, pero hay que parar y ver dónde estás y amar toda esa belleza. Esa alegría de vivir en este lugar, la vida entera vos y yo nacimos de la tierra. Es la alegría de vivir en este lugar.
Hoy debemos decidir el destino de este planeta. Es hora de hacer cumplir nuestro pacto con la tierra, limpiar los ríos y el mar, el aire y el manglar.
desde el fondo de la selva. Llevamos como tuyo, una única bandera. Vamos a vivir, vivir con alegría. Vamos a cuidar, cuidemos el planeta. Recordemos cada día que nacimos de la tierra.
Es tiempo de inventar el tiempo que vendrá, escrito en la lluvia y las olas del mar. El mundo entenderá que tiene que cambiar, que este es nuestro hogar, nuestro
Recordemos cada día que nacimos de la tierra. En ese lugar. Recordemos cada día que nacimos de la tierra. Nacimos de la tierra. Recordemos cada día que nacimos de la tierra. En este lugar. Recordemos cada día que nacimos de la tierra. Nacimos de la tierra.